because I am not prepared. See all of this. So you don't see all the junk.
I think they can.
Across the street.
Yeah, just kind of a nice thing. If they enter that in, I think they can do it right from home. I didn't think about that till after I did it, and I was like, I think they will be able to. Oh.
It's great.
That sort of hit some of his thoughts. Mike Sederlet.
Yeah. I didn't even pick anything on it. Anything of interest?
One of our attendees gave us this evening.
I got that. Thank you.
Rick?
It's ready. We're streaming. We're streaming, so we can go whenever you're ready.
Some reading material.
Thank you. It sounded like it was making noise. The light wasn't on.
The light wasn't working over there either.
Okay. Maybe it was working. I think this one's doing. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Transportation Town Hall. I appreciate you coming. Real quick, if you don't mind, stand up and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Also, want to just take a quick moment. I don't know if any of you know, but District 3 County Commissioner Frank Sample passed away last night. That's a tremendous loss for our community. He was a very valuable member of the commission, and that's going to be a big loss. I would just ask that we all take a brief moment of silence in honor of Frank. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so again, we're here to talk about anything transportation that concerns you here in Genoa Township. We had some questions on the master plan survey that were specific to transportation, and I've done a few summaries of those. Hopefully you grabbed that. We had a little handout on the way in, and those are kind of our guideline. This is going to be a resident-driven discussion, but that's kind of our guideline. Those are some things we want to focus on. I will go ahead and introduce our staff. Actually, what I'll do is I'll let everybody introduce themselves so you can hear what they sound like.
Chad Sell, I'm a lieutenant with Livingston County Sheriff's Office. I oversee our road patrol division and our traffic safety division.
Matt Young, Lieutenant, Sheriff's Office. I'm Special Services, so I handle contracts and the administrative function.
Jason Pless, I'm the Livingston County Sheriff's Office Undersheriff.
Greg Kellogg, I'm the Director of Let's Transportation.
Amy Ruthig, Planning Director for Genoa Township.
Garrett Olson, I'm the Director of Engineering with the Livingston County Road Commission.
Robin Hunt, I'm the Genoa Township Treasurer. Rick Sissy, your Genoa Township Clerk.
All right, and last but certainly not least,
Good evening. My name is Kelly Van Marter, and I'm the Township Manager.
excellent. Thank you, everybody. So now you know who's here and
We
who
all
will be
know.
informing you. They'll kind of handle what is going on. Oh, hey, I'm Kevin Spire, supervisor. Take that for granted sometimes. What we found, we regularly budget about 500,000 annually toward road improvement projects. And the support for that was mostly either that it was just right or too little. Very few people thought that was too much. So we have pretty much planned to keep that moving forward. We don't always spend that on roads, say, in a year. We might put some of that aside for a project that's coming up in the future. Garrett will let you know about a few things that may or may not be on the horizon here in Genoa. Generally, the road commission will give us a breakdown of roads that they're a little bit concerned about, and that plays heavily into our decision on what roads we actually tackle. We're not road experts by any stretch. And so that's going to stay where it's at for the foreseeable future. Unless this is your chance to say if you think that's not enough. But the people spoke, and we're pretty confident with that number. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, kind of that level, adjusted as costs get a little high. Hang on just a second. The folks at home need to hear you.
Do any of the township roads include subdivision or limited community roads?
They do, depending if it's public or private. Whether or not the road commission will handle doing those roads, for the most part, actually, Garrett's gonna share something with you. So to tie into your question, I will give him the mic. The way we currently do it is the road commission hasn't been able to tackle subdivisions just due to the budget situations. And so we've done special assessment districts, and we will match either 1,500 or 20%?
25% or 1,500
25% or
per parcel,
1,500 per
whichever's left.
parcel is what we have contributed. Now, we don't contribute on private roads. People are responsible for private roads all on their own. But that's how we get subdivision roads done right now. But I will turn it over to Garrett real quick, and some people are probably going to be excited to learn of some developments.
Sure. So as some of you may have been aware, there were some gas tax law changes that started in 2026. One beneficial part of that is that the Road Commission's funding increased a decent amount through what's called Act 51, which is how we're funded, which is gas taxes and vehicle registration fees. So kind of going back to your question, there aren't technically township-owned roads. They're all owned by the Road Commission or they are private. There's no specifically township-owned ones, so they're all under the maintenance of the Livingston County Road Commission. The townships throughout Livingston County contribute significantly towards our road projects. It just helps us stretch our dollars as far as we can to pave as many miles of road as we can. As far as the difference between subdivision roads and I'll call them main roads, or essentially roads that have a center line stripe to them. Historically, how we've done it is the township will typically contribute normally around 50%, and then we'll match that 50% on the main roads. For subdivisions, historically, they've been done through special assessment districts where those specific residents kick in some extra money to help get their subdivision streets redone with some contribution from the township. Now, the good news that we've seen recently is that with our funding increase, we are moving towards being able to contribute towards those subdivision projects. We're thinking right now we're going to contribute on a similar scale of what Genoa is contributing and most of the other townships in the county. At that 25% mark. So then that would leave about 50% left of the construction costs for the residents that live in those specific subs. Only public roads, correct. Private roads would be fully separate from the road commission. I know that occasionally, SADs are a lot of times administered through the township still, but those wouldn't see road commission matching funds. Do your private streets get the match, or is it just the public? Just the public streets. Okay. Okay. Did I answer your question?
The
Okay.
finance element of it all, the private road, we'll finance it for it. We don't contribute.
So, absolutely.
While we're on the subject of subdivisions, does the township have an ordinance for new development to include a non-motorized path or sidewalk through their development?
In terms of like, do we have a rule regarding?
Yeah, I want to point out that Green Oak Township, for example, has that ordinance, and they have two big housing developments that are on either side of US 23. And to fill the non-motorized gap that exists there now is a pretty big cost. But with these housing developments, with the ordinance that they have to provide a non-motorized path, it's really relieved the township on about half the cost to fill in that gap. So I was just wondering if Genoa Township has a similar ordinance in their charter or however you look at it.
Actually, I'll let Kelly handle this one. Do you have a live mic?
I do.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me okay? We do have an ordinance that does require sidewalks. Typically, that is a requirement internal to the subdivision. So there's language that says if you're building a new sub, you must put sidewalks inside the subdivision. There are some laws that restrict how much we can force a developer to install sidewalks or bike paths off-site, so on property that they do not own. But historically, we have worked very closely with developers. We actually just recently did a project that's underway right now off of Chalice and Bauer area, and they are installing a sidewalk to connect to the sidewalk that's at Bauer Road. So it wasn't something we could necessarily force upon them, but we do work with them and try to get those connections whenever we can. There is, that's correct.
Great.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Kevin. Question is in regards to paving roads. Is there a priority regarding looking at roads that need to be redone versus dirt roads, and how do you put them in line of priorities?
Yeah, so this is working here. Okay. So there are, it's kind of two different pots of money that we look at as far as rehabilitating existing paved roads and then looking at things like intersection improvements and gravel road conversions to asphalt. Those are a much larger cost overall than simply resurfacing an existing road, like Door Road as an example, or is much different than, for example, when we converted Crooked Lake Road from gravel to asphalt. So they are two different pots of money. They don't really fight with each other per se, because we set aside about the same amount of money every year for asphalt rehabilitation. So when larger scale projects come up, like an intersection improvement or a gravel road conversion, it's normally something that gets started in some conversations with the township that road lies in.
Excellent. Anyone else care to continue the discussion?
My question, or my concern, I should say, deals more basically with the master plan itself. I think I read in the survey where it claims that a large percentage of residents prefer that the township and the surrounding area maintain a sort of a bedroom community. And I think even in the survey I read where they said that Genoa was traditionally a bedroom community. And I've been here a long time, and it depends on how long you say tradition is, because up into the 80s, it was basically a farm community, and it was a typical basic traditional community. And I guess the thing that I'm concerned about is from a master plan standpoint, do we focus more on maintaining a traditional community, or do we stay with the focus on a bedroom community where people go from one point to point A to point B to work and whatever? But I think the biggest issue with that is it has a lot to do with transportation, with how well that works. And I think right now we're seeing a lot of the problems that occur in not only Genoa but Livingston County from that transition of this bedroom community to a traditional community, and the infrastructure is just not there. The traffic is especially from where I'm from is horrible, and I don't see it improving. And that, again, my thing, I think more importantly is we need to decide as a community of which route we're taking. Is it going to be, again, more of a traditional community, or is it going to be focused more on a bedroom type community where transportation and commuting is a major part of that?
Okay, well, the feedback was overwhelmingly that we wanted to stay as a bedroom community. I don't have the exact percentage, but I believe it was over 80. However, Amy or Kelly, would you like to take a stab at the rest of the question?
I mean, that's exactly why we're in the process of doing the master plan and reviewing that. In my view, a bedroom community is more related to whether or not we are looking to attract industry here for jobs, right? So bedroom community most typically is when people live in one spot, but they travel someplace else for work. So my take on the results from the survey were that folks are okay with continuing to drive to Farmington and Ann Arbor and points outside of Livingston County for work, provided that when they get here, this place stays a lot like we all moved here for. I think the struggle a lot with, as it relates to traffic and transportation, is that is a regional problem. So Genoa Township could make a priority to keep itself rural, but if our surrounding communities decide they want to do a lot of development, maybe they make a priority that they want to do single family development or multifamily development. Genoa has a lot of shopping that's regional. So those folks are coming here. We see it in the city of Brighton along Grand River too. So that's really where like county planning and more regional planning kind of comes in, because we can plan to stay rural, but if the other communities are heavily developing, we're going to feel that here. And so sort of working together with our neighbors, I think, is really important. And then also making sure our master plan does follow those goals of sort of keeping the character the same that we all moved out here for.
Amy was kind enough to look up the number for me, and 70% prefer to be a bedroom community, 20% prefer not to be a bedroom community, and 10% don't seem to care. So it's pretty overwhelmingly that they want to stay that way, and that's the way we're progressing with the plan.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to make a quick response to that. Is again, I think I gave Kelly a handout that I prepared showing kind of a comparison between the two of my own, and I think I covered a lot of the bases there. But I think if you really truly understand bedroom community, and this is debatable, this is my opinion, is that they are the result of poor planning to begin with. The people move away from a place because it's not prepared, it doesn't meet their needs, and they're looking for something better. And I think, again, that's something that needs to be seriously considered, especially in a master plan.
Excellent, thank you. Real quick, so we don't lose our law enforcement over here, one thing that a lot of people brought up as issues: speeding. They want speeds lowered, all kinds of suggestions for where to lower speed. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over so everybody can understand that. So the township cannot set speed limits. We have no authority whatsoever to do that. Chad will explain to you how that happens.
All right, so this is kind of a two-part. Myself and Garrett will jump in afterwards. So the way that Michigan law is written, so we operate under the Michigan Motor Vehicle Code. That's where you find speed limits. The only people that can do speed limits are the Road Commission and the Michigan State Police. They don't give us any authority. There is one district reconstructionist for 5 counties, which includes our county. So you can venture to guess that he's pretty busy when it comes down to getting out and doing the speed studies. Generally, people travel at the speed that they feel comfortable with. For you all that live in Genoa Township, one of the things that I brought up at a previous meeting with the board here is there's inattentional blindness when you're driving. You live in Genoa Township, you drive at what feels comfortable for you. You probably couldn't even tell me where the stop signs are, where the speed limit signs are, because you travel those roads so frequently. So in the big picture, people drive at the speed that they feel comfortable with. Some people obviously drive faster than what their abilities allow. But at the same time, when it comes down to it, Ever since COVID, I will tell you that speed is through the roof. When people stopped driving and you could roll a bowling ball down I-96, when everybody came back to reality and started interacting again, we're seeing constant speeds over 100 on the freeway, constant speed everywhere. It's just unfortunately one of those things where it's a double-edged sword for the law enforcement side. Is nobody wants a ticket, but everybody wants speed enforcement done. So that's the hard part. The township did invest in 2 speed signs. We installed them for them. One's on Crooked Lake and one's on Brighton Road. But like I had told the township, is that you can drive by that sign and it flashes at you all the time. Number one, either you don't care, or number two, when you drive by it 20 times in a month, you don't even see that flashing number anymore. So it's just one of those natures of the beast when it comes down to it. So locally, the township and the sheriff's office, we have no control over the speed. We obviously go out and take the crashes, and the state police are the keepers of all of that data with the crashes and everything. But when it comes down to actually doing the speed limits, there was a recent change, well, not recent so much anymore, about 6 years ago, that now to reduce the speed limit, you have to have intersecting driveways. So, and that's in a quarter-mile stretch. You have to have, I think it's just off of record before I turn it over to Garrett, you have to have like 60 intersecting roadways within a quarter mile to get the speed limit down to 25 miles an hour. Otherwise, everything reverts back to 55 miles an hour. So I'll turn the rest of that over to Garrett, where, you know, they made some laws because of some neighboring counties that had unusually low speed limits, and they just tried to make it for everybody statewide now.
Yeah, that's a great lead in. Thank you for that. So as was alluded to, speed limits are set jointly by the Road Commission and the Michigan State Police. We can't set a speed limit without the state police signing off on it, and typically vice versa. They don't go the opposite way. There are 2 laws that were mentioned, which the first one is, I call it the 85th percentile law. It's essentially a prevailing speed study that we look into a road, and it's calculated based on data that comes back on how fast people are driving on the road. Unfortunately, sometimes if people are comfortable driving very fast on that road, then the calculated speed limit that comes back a lot of times will result in a maximum 55 mile an hour speed limit, which you see a lot of in Genoa Township. The other speed limit law is the driveway intersections. That can be set solely by the Road Commission, and that's just are there enough of those locations on this section of road to be able to lower the speed limit? And again, it's not up for interpretation. It's just how many are there, and then there's a chart that we can follow, and we can post a lower speed limit because of that. It's very difficult for us to get speed limit lowered because, like was mentioned, people are going to drive as fast as they feel comfortable driving. And the way that the law is written in the Michigan Vehicle Code is that data is taken from speed studies that we do. And if the data supports those higher speed limits, we have to post it at that speed limit. It's unfortunately not a law in which we can, say that, hey, the community believes that, everyone believes that Dora Road should be 45 miles an hour. It's unfortunately not as easy as us hearing those responses and being able to set it that way. It's a calculated number that we have to follow by law. I know there's attempts to get that changed, but it's still, that's how it sits currently in the Michigan Vehicle Code.
Excellent. Thank you, Garrett. Absolutely. Hang on just a second.
The roads around schools, who sets a speed limit for that?
So there is another law that's associated with around school zones specifically. They're pretty specific as to how you can set them up. Just as an example, if you do set one up in a school zone, you can only lower the speed limit by 20 miles an hour maximum, and it can only be around certain periods of school let in and school let out. You have to have the flashers that go along with it, things like that. So it's also a pretty strict rule that is surrounding that as well.
The reason why I bring it up is discovering in Livingston County that some of these parochial schools that have popped up, that aren't in the school system, that the roads around their campuses don't have anything, nothing to say that this is a school here. So I'm wondering how how can we correct that?
Yeah, that's something, and I would defer. There's another engineer in our office that deals pretty specifically with that stuff. I don't know specifically how it's tied, if it's like a private school, like you've mentioned, or not in the public system, like you're kind of alluding to. We do always work with a school district if they do reach out to us. It kind of has to be one of those voluntary reach out things where they notice that there's a speeding issue, and specifically putting in reduced speed limits around schools are intended for walkers that are near that school. So you have to be able to prove that there's walkers that are crossing those main roads that you'd like to lower the speed limit on. But if you want more information with that, I can definitely follow up with you on that. And like I said, I have a resource in my office that can get you some more information on that if there's one specifically.
I'm the chairman of the Livingston County Transportation Coalition, and we do what's called a bike audit, where we go to a school and we examine all the infrastructure around it and figure out what could make it safer, what's it's missing, that kind of thing. So we've done 4 so far, and we're going to do another one this month. So I'd like to share that data that we come up with the road commission, if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a business card I'll get to you at the end of the meeting.
Now, I'm known to be critical, but in my opinion, it seems as though the rules and regulations for driving speeds focus more on the benefits of the person driving the car than the residents and the pedestrians that are on the roadsides that these cars are traveling. What consideration is there for people in regards to the health and safety of people in regards to establishing a speed limit?
Go ahead, Garrett.
Yeah,
start
I can
off,
take
and
that
I'll
one.
see if I can
I unfortunately don't have a.
tackle that one at all.
I was just gonna say I unfortunately don't have much say in it. It's a law that's set. I hate to say this, but outside of our office, right? It's a state law that's put in place. Like I said, we have to abide by that. Unfortunately, I live on one of those roads that a lot of people would consider, people that drive too fast on it. It's unfortunately a pretty strictly written law. So like you've kind of mentioned, there's not a lot that's necessarily taken into consideration for the surrounding area, but more so it's tied to those prevailing speed of drivers on that road itself.
In regards to the enforcement side of things, so one thing that obviously they refer to pedestrians and bicyclists as vulnerable road users. That, like Garrett had explained, there's no carve out in any of that. Like when you get to Ann Arbor and all that stuff where they have bike lanes and pedestrian lanes, that's their choosing to do that. You're looking at millions of dollars to start including bike lanes and things like that in any of these communities that are out here. When it comes down to one thing that, and I haven't worked with Garrett, but I have worked with the road commission since 2007 when I was in our traffic safety division. If you've ever noticed, there's never a speed limit sign on a gravel road in Livingston County, and they do that on purpose because they don't want to encourage people to do 55. They want people to drive the speed that they feel comfortable with. But all of the dirt roads in Livingston County are 55 miles an hour. When it comes to enforcement, we cover 13 townships. We have 2 deputies that are assigned specifically to traffic enforcement. One of those deputies is partially funded by the Secondary Road Patrol grant from the state of Michigan. That's a calculated cost based on 1980 population statistics. But at the same time, that's the money that we get, which is about $153,000 last year, which doesn't fully fund a deputy with his equipment, benefits, all that stuff. So that's where we're at, is we only have 2 deputies that are assigned to traffic. All of the other deputies that you see out there can do traffic enforcement, but at the same time, and they're encouraged to do traffic enforcement, but they're also balancing the police work of 13 townships and going through and doing all of the enforcement everywhere. And on a personal note, I'll tell you that when it comes to the 85th percentile, most people travel 5 to 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, whether they're local residents or out-of-town residents, because they know we can't stop everybody. And our deputies have to make a judgment call. Are we going to stop everybody for 4 over? Because then we're not ever going to be available to go to 911 calls, because we're all going to be on traffic stops at the same time. So that's kind of, and we as a law enforcement agency, a rule came out a long time ago. We never actually employed this, but you can't have quotas. So that whole thing, that end of the month, the cops were writing more tickets. That's not a thing. We don't get like extra toasters or anything at the end of the year for the most tickets. But at the same time, we encourage traffic enforcement for our people, but we also can't mandate it. It's just part of their function. If somebody's low on tickets, we say, hey, you know, maybe write some more tickets, make some more traffic stops. But then you also have to look at their caseload with the frauds and the assault and batteries, domestic violence, all the other calls that come with being in law enforcement. So that's the difficult part, is that with 13 townships, we have 2 deputies to cover those 13 townships that are strictly 100% traffic related. And on top of it, when the township calls us and says, hey, the residents are complaining about this, that happens, but it happens 13 times. So those deputies are constantly running around triaging the areas of the complaints. So that's the hard part from the law enforcement perspective of it.
Yeah, great. I appreciate that. But I have a question. What is your opinion in terms of just having an appearance? I mean, anytime I'm driving down the road and I see a police car in front of me, I see a lot of red lights too. And I'm just wondering, has there been any effort whatsoever of just providing an awareness or an appearance of officers in some particular areas?
What immediately comes to mind is Florida and their ghost cars of parking patrol cars everywhere. And that becomes one of those things where they know, and that is the next hard thing to do. So we as a department have invested in speed signs that people don't know they're speed signs, because that's the funny thing. When you have a speed sign, some people speed up to see how high they can get the numbers, and then some people slow down, things like that. So that's the hard part, is that it's also a one-off deterrence. Absolutely. Because at the same time, on a morning commute on I-96, life could be flowing just perfectly fine. Everybody's enjoying their coffee, their podcast, everything. You put one cop in the median who's doing paperwork and not even running radar, and then you can sit up on top of the interchange in 96 and 23 and just watch the accordion. Brake light, brake light, brake light, and it just keeps going. So that's actually another complaint from a whole different side of the aspect, is don't put the cops out there because they cause the problem, because they make people slow down. And I mean, it's 2026, so we can debate anything, and we try to do that. Our traffic deputies do a lot of stationary radar instead of driving around. They're the 2 guys that have the semi-marked cars where the driver's side doesn't have any marks on it, and only the passenger side does. And when you turn the lights on, it lights up like a Christmas tree. So we try to be sneaky to an extent, but at the same time, it's one of those things where people don't want the cops sneaking around, but they want both sides. They don't want the cops sneaking around, and then when the cops do sneak around and get them, they're like, you shouldn't be doing that. But yeah, we want you to do enforcement. The best part is when we get complaints in subdivisions about speed, and then we pull the person over and we're like, hey, we're in here because of a complaint. And they're like, yeah, I'm the one that complained. So that happens too. I've been here for 21 years. There's not a lot of surprises when it comes to traffic enforcement that I can't tell you that it hasn't happened.
Man, you guys get blamed for more stuff than the supervisor. I know you have a question.
Well, as far as the traffic coming in, as of right this minute, I've noticed that with all of the construction, you can't get anywhere. And so I see a lot now myself, I live around here, to your guys' point. I know the back way, I know how to go, but what I see is a lot of very frustrated people. Trying to get, for example, I had to pick my dog up in Fowlerville today from daycare. Going through downtown Howell is an absolute nightmare. It took me 45 minutes. And it's not school season. During school season, with all the construction, and then people start driving even worse, especially if you're not on regular business. And since we're talking about transportation as a township, and not necessarily on people speeding, because people are going to speed anyways, no matter where they're at. You know, what about, like, we have the new hospital right up here. Then we have the one, U of M. All of these large influxes of people coming in with very little infrastructure done before they come in. Then suddenly we say, hey, let's shut off this main road. We'll just close Grand River. That'll be awesome. We'll shift everybody down this side street that leads to a freeway that's also closed, no matter which direction you want to go. And maybe you'll just go around it by going south on, oh, can't go south on 20th, north either. And then we wonder why people are driving like jerks. And although I'm not advocating speeding, I have places I have to be, and sometimes it gets tense, right? And I think we're part of our own problem. We're literally making people's life suck and then wondering why they're acting poorly. And I think that whoever was in charge of some of these other things that drove everybody through us, we're a throughway. You know, Genoa Township seems to be mostly where people travel from Howell to Brighton, right? So we just sat back and said, okay, you guys just screw everything up on those sides and we're going to suffer for it. And I live in a subdivision that I can't get out of. I can't make a left. I sit there with my truck in all-wheel drive in the middle of summer, switch to sport mode, and floor it because there's no way to make a left. So I'm one of the people you're complaining about speeding for that section, but otherwise I'd have to make a right down to a road that's closed. Can't get here. It's pretty terrible.
Take that up with the governor. We're fixing the damn roads. We waited till the bitter end, but I guess it's better late than never. We do feel your pain. That's kind of what we explained. We have made a commitment to try to manage growth here in Genoa Township. However, some of our surrounding communities seem to be adding quite a bit. The Michigan facility is not in Genoa Township, so we didn't have any say on that one. The hospital, that is us, and we felt there was a traffic study, and it does seem to have enough flow to take care of it, and it was a very valuable asset for the community, for his hospital of its stature in Livingston County. So we were honored that they chose to come to Genoa Township. Amy?
Yeah, when that hospital went in, there was a traffic study that was done. And then when we had the apartments that went in, there was a traffic study that was done. The planning commission kicked it back and said, okay, now you need to add the hospital. Because the hospital it was approved, but it wasn't being built yet. So we have been very diligent about doing the traffic studies. And unfortunately, you have to go by what's, as they know, or as Garrett knows, what's in the books, how you do a traffic study. And then with the construction part of it, it's difficult because you have so many entities. You have the MDOT, and then you have Livingston County Road Commission, and then you have the cities that are doing their projects. And yeah, in a great scheme of things, it'd be great if they could all coordinate everything together and make it easier for everybody, especially for them doing their job and for the ambulances and everything too, because I would really want them to have, I guess, the easier path than me if they have emergencies to get to. But it is frustrating, and that's what they say. It's summertime is cone season in Michigan, and unfortunately it's not just Genoa, it's not just Livingston County, it's everywhere around. So I mean, I just want to let you know that Genoa Township has taken efforts to do the traffic impacts assessments to make sure that it can handle it.
I think, and my comments were not meant for our township, it's that we are victim of everything that's happening around us, right down to the freeway, which none of us have any purview. That comes from the state. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing a lot of it, and I think a lot of the negativity, probably what's keeping you guys busy on a lot of it, are the cause. And it's a major bummer for those of us who are actually paying the taxes here and suffering that. But I mean, thank you for the study. And I'm happy the hospital, I live almost directly across from it, so it's convenient for when I get hurt.
You can definitely blame Waze and Google Maps for all the people getting around. Back in the day when you had to get out the old paper map and read it, not a lot of us were able to find our way around some of those problems. So one thing I do want to talk about, so question 15 was, how important are each of these transportation options to you? Cars are our most important transportation option, according to the people, by a fairly significant amount. Walking was right there. Walking was about a 73.8. What we found interesting, buses were down at 33, which is a little surprising, yet when we put many options of things, services we could provide to the residents, one of which was a various smorgasbord of possible law enforcement options. None of those failed to break 50%. However, contracting with the Let's Bus got very close to 50%. And then we saw that a lot of people, only 6% said they would use public transportation if it was available. So that was kind of puzzling to us. And so what I've done is I have Greg here just to share a little bit of, he's the managing director of Let's, to share a little bit of his knowledge on the situation and what that means. We're pretty comfortable. It means that most people realize that someday we're all going to get older and we might not be able to drive, and we like the idea of having a bus there to take us around. So we're willing to sacrifice to make that happen for the people that are currently there. But Greg, if you want to just explain a little bit about what happens.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I think your residents have some foresight that, not only will they one day possibly need public transit, but maybe their neighbors, their relatives do now. So that we do see a lot of that in our surveys too. So just to give you an overview of what we're currently doing in Genoa, I left a handout over on the table by the door there if you're interested. Just to give you a high-level overview here. Let's did roughly 154,000 trips, passenger trips in 2025. This data is from January through December of 25. 154,000 trips. A trip is A to B. It's not a round trip. It's a one-way trip. We do quite a few of those. And that's how they're measured in transit. So of those 154,000 trips, roughly 20%, a little over 20%, either started or ended in Genoa, or both. So we have 31,782 trips where the drop-off stop was in Genoa. We have 30,868 trips where the pickup stop was in Genoa. So there is an imbalance. Some folks are going, to say a doctor's visit, getting a ride home, things like that. 8,429 trips started and ended in Genoa. So there is intra township travel from Let's. But that's a significant number. 20, a fifth of our trips are occurring, have a pickup or a drop off in this township, which is to be expected. As it's been mentioned that you are right in between the two major cities, our major cities of Brighton and Howell. And this also, we all I'm a lifelong Livingston County resident. We like to think of this as a rural county. We do have an urban area by the federal designation. Road Commission, I think, spoke of the federal funding. We get our federal funding based on the Howell, it's changed names, Hamburg, Genoa, South Lyon urban area, which pretty much straddles Grand River between Brighton and Howell, goes into Hamburg Township and South Lyon, where the density is highest. So we do receive quite a bit of federal funding every year based on the population growth and the density in that area. But the question of whether to contract, some of the pros. The biggest pro is the value to residents. So we have existing contracts with Putnam and Unadilla. They share a bus between those two townships, and Hamburg Township. Theirs is dedicated to their senior center. That's been going since 2019. And how that works is we receive about 50% of our expenses reimbursed from the feds, roughly 30% from the state. So on the gross cost of a service, and I just put some simple numbers here together. A service 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, every week of the year, it's about 3,120 hours. The cost of that, the gross cost for drivers, the fuel, all of our overhead costs, dispatching, me, it's about 218,000. And only about 20% of that would come from the contracting township. Again, it's about roughly 70% is grant funded, and these are formula grants. We don't have to go out and hope we get money every year. They're formula. They're again based on population and density. So we historically have not had a lot of. And we do have to have that local piece, that 20%. For every dollar we spend, we have to have the 20%, that 20 cents from a local source. Historically, we have more federal funding than we can match, federal and state funding, which is what opens up this possibility of additional contracts. Also, traditionally, our Board of Commissioners has, encouraged us to find partnerships in the community. I'm trying to be diplomatic, obviously. We get exactly $65,000 from the county, from the general fund, out of roughly a $5.5 million operating budget. So I have to be creative, and contracts are one of the ways that we can expand service and put more buses on the road and take care of more residents without the having an additional general fund appropriation or a tax millage. So we sort of, we pursue those. I don't knock on the township's doors. I've given presentations. I've talked with Kevin over the years. So it's something that we are able to do. The big question is, what would you get for that? Even if it's a, awesome value, what does your $40,000, $43,000 annually buy you? The answer simply is a dedicated vehicle. So in other places where we've done this, I don't have exact statistics, but the ridership has absolutely increased. I do have one. So in Putnam and Unadilla, between 24 and 25, which was, we started with them in 22. So this is like this third year of service. We grew 18% year over year in ridership. I have no doubt that we would not be able to do that without that dedicated vehicle. When you have a dedicated vehicle, that does not mean we stop serving you with all our other vehicles. It just means that vehicle does not leave, well, it does leave the township, but it's for your residents. It would be open, that would be the township's call, where it goes and how often. But just, in terms of what we're currently doing, that's sort of how that would work, is you'd have a bus dedicated to the township. Now, all of our other service are countywide, and the township agreements are dial-a-ride. You call or use our app. Actually, about 40%, this is a sort of getting off topic, but 40% of our trips are booked on our mobile app now, if you haven't used it. So no matter how you book it, call, we have text booking and the mobile app. It's on demand, same day, or advanced reservation. Another option that you could do, especially in a dense area like this, if you look at the map of Genoa, our trips are concentrated obviously at Latson and Grand River. We have a lot over at Lakeshore. We do a lot of regular work trips out of there. And so one option is scheduled service. It doesn't have to follow our traditional demand response or dial-a-ride. It could be, we're at Meyer at noon, we're at Lakeshore every hour, something like that, to where it would flow and folks could expect, depend on the bus being there at a certain time. So it could take different forms, but just wanted to let you know how the funding piece would work, which is my main job at LETS is grant management and finance. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions as far as what we're doing in Genoa now, or.
First of all, I want to thank Greg for this effort that he's put forward of doing funding, imaginative funding, and we try to do everything we can to support that. My question is, you listed some statistics, and one of them was how many rides were within Genoa Township, like from Genoa Township to Genoa Township?
Roughly 8,500.
Yeah, so the dedicated vehicle that you're talking about would be perfect for that scenario. So if the Genoa Township had a dedicated vehicle, like in Hamburg and in Pinckney and Unadilla, it would relieve a little bit of the stress on the LETS system, and at the same time be more comprehensive for the residents of Genoa Township. Do I have that read right? Did I?
It would, yeah. I mean, anytime we dedicate a vehicle to a specific jurisdiction, it frees up our resources elsewhere. So, yes, that's accurate.
And did you say what the cost would be to the township to do that?
Yeah, and just whatever the total annual hours, our hourly gross all-in overhead cost is about $70 an hour right now. That changes. It's just based on our total expenses divided by our total service hours. So I adjust that every year. But right now it's about $70 an hour. So, again, out of that $70 an hour, consider about 20% of that $70 would need to come from the township.
Yeah, I think I heard a number of about 20 grand would be what I think Hamburg Township pays.
That's roughly what I think 25 is what Hamburg is paying, and they're only doing 40 hours a week though. The numbers I was talking about earlier were a little bit more than that.
Okay.
So any combination of days and hours can be done. It's an hourly rate. So
Great. Thank you.
welcome.
And Greg, real quick, one thing that we got several feedbacks on, some people being concerned about, they go to enjoy the nightlife in downtown Brighton or downtown Howell on a Friday or Saturday evening, and they'd like to take a ride. And because our private ride sources are a little more limited, would the township be able to schedule a bus to aid between, maybe we do an intergovernmental agreement with Brighton, Howell, Genoa to kind of help our residents do that? Is that something that could be available?
Absolutely. Again, it could the scope of the service could be whatever you want it to be within our federal rules. But yeah, and that's actually, Kevin, one of the things. I've been a LET since 2014, and something I've always wanted to do is sort of a late night get folks home to and from the bar restaurant safely. It's just that is usually slides down the priority list whenever we have additional resources. We want to give priority to the transit dependent seniors, people with disabilities. The hospital was discussed. Trinity Health is a big partner of ours. We have they have a dedicated vehicle too that's strictly for their facilities. So it can take any shape, but that's something again that I think would be very valuable. That especially that 10 p.m. and later time frame. Right now, our latest bus is only out till 10 p.m. So it's just managing resources. But if that's something that the township or a partnership or a collaboration is interested in doing, we could certainly do something like that.
Something we could discuss. Are you fairly confident you could find drivers who were willing to drive those shifts?
Yes, yeah. We have not had an issue. And just as a small aside, a lot of our drivers are part-time staff, especially. We have over 80 employees, by the way. A good number of our part-timers are retirees or folks with second jobs. So we don't have an issue with weekend coverage. I'm sure I could get late night coverage if it came to it.
Excellent. It's definitely something worth considering. I think I had a couple questions over here.
So in terms of the percentages, you mentioned that there's about 31,000 people that are getting dropped off and picked up from this area. Where do you see is that the highest concentration that you take statistics for?
That's a good
I apologize,
question.
I don't have the sheet in front of me.
Yeah, actually, this township does have the highest concentration of pickups and or drop-offs, including the cities. Brighton City is close with, let's see, about 27,000
Thank you.
stops. Actually, Howell City had 30,000, 30,500 pickup stops in 2025. So, yeah, between Howell, Brighton, and Genoa, those are the top three, but you have the highest concentration, yes.
And where else do you see dedicated buses, I guess you would call, that are allocated to specific townships?
The only dedicated vehicles we have are the townships I mentioned, so Putnam and Unadilla Township share one. Hamburg Township has their own for the senior center, and then the hospital. Those are the only purpose, dedicated vehicles that don't leave a certain jurisdiction or a certain, vendor like the hospital. All of our other vehicles are countywide, out of county, regional trips. So there is no vehicle or route that is dedicated to Genoa Township at this time.
And the Putnam and Unadilla joined about 3 years ago, you
That's
said?
2022, I believe. Yep.
Do you see that as a result of the growth of that area?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with. I mean, I know Hamburg Township has grown tremendously. I'm not able to speak to the growth out there, but I know that a big priority for the Putnam and Unadilla board was seniors, the aging of the population.
Yep.
So.
Thank you.
In absence of having mass transportation or public transportation, this seems to be the best option. And to any of my constituents and citizens that I talked to that knew I was coming to this meeting, all of them were, find a way that we can have seniors still have transportation. And so I heard people say, man, if we picked up at Genoa Township Hall every day, but that doesn't make sense. People can't, if you can't drive out of your sub to get to here, that doesn't help. So I think Let's is a great alternative for us, the big white Uber instead. But I heard from more than one people, plenty saying, I would love to pay this forward. I would support funding Let's additionally, just like funding parks. It's the right thing to do because we're all going to be there one day.
Thank you, Greg, and I concur. I have heard that exact thing. Sorry about that, Dave.
So how do you currently get paid if there's that many people coming into Genoa Township? Is it out of the Livingston County Fund or?
Yeah, it's anything that's not dedicated service. It's part of it is from the county general fund appropriation. We and our grant, our federal and state grants. So I sort of just juggle all of the other local sources of funding. So we're able to use some of our fare box is not local match. We roughly 8% of our budget is covered by individual fares, so it's not a big share of our revenue. But social service trips, hourly trips, these are all fares. You could consider them fares, but they're paid by an organization. Those are able to be used as match. So that's how we match the countywide service. And I guess if I'm answering your question, there's currently no dedicated funding source for Genoa. It's just all the local funding that we receive, that service generated revenue that we receive countywide.
So yet you're saying we have 8,400 trips starting or ending in Genoa, and we don't have a dedicated bus.
Nope. It's, we're just, it's a convenience of your geography, I guess. We're here, it's in the center of the county, so we're able to serve your residents. So
I just want to echo what Jeff said and the feedback about Let's and paying it forward and people recognizing that someday we're all going to be there. So we want to continue support for that system. Thank you.
And real quick, if I could piggyback on what Kevin was saying about, I want to keep, some agencies call it a drunk bus. I don't like that term. A late night bus that takes folks to and from establishments. You could also partner with, on seniors, for example. I don't think, Genoa doesn't have a dedicated senior center. You have the Howell Senior Center down the road here. Okay, and I think there's, okay, so Brighton has, right, the HEPRA, yep. And Brighton Senior Center has their own bus. They only have, I think, one driver, so they can't go too far with it. But another option would be, for example, Osceola, Genoa, Heartland partnering on a senior center bus to go to the Howell Senior Center, just, for example, to his point, so.
Yes, Greg, I was wondering how many rides or how many people you have to turn down for a ride per year.
I don't have the number specific to Genoa Township. It's under 2%. That if I had the answer, a clear answer to that question, it would make life a lot easier. How many rides, how many latent rides are there? How many rides do people want to take that they can't? The problem is there's different ways to measure a denial or a refusal. What our dispatchers do if someone calls and needs to get to an appointment or go to the grocery store, they will keep checking times, like, within a couple of hours on either side of that request. If it's I got to be at an appointment at 2, we may say we can get you there at 1. You'll have to wait there for an hour, but we work with them. That, if the ride is taken, but it's not the exact time they wanted, that would not be recorded. What we do record is refusals, where we offer an alternative time and the customer rejects that and just doesn't take a ride. The number last year was about right around 5,000 refusals. And again, I don't have the specific Genoa numbers, but that could be, it could be measured in a lot of different ways. So it's hard to say. I do want to mention our 2019 master plan. I don't bring copies because it's 7 years old now. But there was a service proposal for a fixed route service on Grand River, scheduled service between Brighton and Howell. And that report has more data on where the latent demand is, where the highest concentrations of people are, where the likely stops might be on a fixed route service. So that would, shed light on the question of how many transit users are there out there that would use a service if it was more convenient, that had, more times available that fit their needs. So I think that's what you're getting at, is that, how many people couldn't we serve that needed a ride?
Right. I was concerned about that idea of the fixed route. We have talked about that before.
Yeah. And
Fenton has a trolley.
Yeah, and
Fenton,
it
takes some
like
people
that
on
idea.
their downtown route. They
Yep.
go to the restaurants, and it just seems like we drag our feet on this.
Agree. Oh, absolutely. Ben.
Thank you for coming, Greg. We really appreciate all that Let's does. I'm a 30-year resident of Genoa Township. I've come from a larger city before I moved here. And transportation for me is freedom. If I don't have a car, or if I don't have my family to drive me, or my neighbor to drive me, or my church to drive me, I'm without transportation. How do I get to the doctor? How do I do grocery shopping? What about church on Sunday, or synagogue, or a temple, whatever religion? As we have the 3 officers here from the county, they can probably attest in seeing Let's buses constantly circulating around the county, moving people around, people with grocery bags getting on a bus, people going to work in the morning. I understand that in the morning, trying to get a bus between 6 in the morning and 9 o'clock, that type of a window, most of the buses are taken up, are all booked up. People going to work, people going to school, people going to the appointments. So what I find unfortunate and sad is that we live in one of the wealthiest counties in Michigan. Let me say that again. We live in one of the wealthiest counties in Michigan, and we constantly hear there's no money. Well, there is some money around. because we need money for fire department, we need money for law enforcement, we need money for EMS, we need money to provide public services. Where would thousands and thousands of Livingston County residents that live here that are just making it, living from paycheck to paycheck, sometimes working 2 jobs, the car breaking down that's 20 years old, they need transportation to get around, to be contributing citizens in this county. And yet, we only get $64,000 from the county commissioners towards a $5-6 million budget. There were many meetings where I attended where the police has to come in and beg for money for a budget in order to provide the best services possible. Now, I know there's a federal government. Of course, they can provide some money, but that comes with some strings attached, I guess. But I won't go there right now. But the point about public transportation, my last comment, I've learned that in our county here, the word public is a pejorative. It's a word that, get a car, get a job. You can do it on your own. You don't need government to help you with anything. Well, we do need government. If we're living in a civilized society, we need one another to provide us and help us with services, and we should be more than glad to pay for it. When we say that we have the lowest taxes, this county has the lowest taxes in Michigan, you know what we're saying? We have the lowest services. When it comes to public health, when it comes to public transportation, when it comes, Genoa Township doesn't even have law enforcement. They have to contract it out. So money is here. The only question is how we're willing to spend it. Just remember, out of 20,000 people that live here, a quarter of them are not ghosts, but real people that need support and help. Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ben. And real quick, Greg, just wondering, whatever the percentage ends up being that Genoa has of maybe rides that don't get picked up, are you fairly confident that with a contracted bus, we could get that number to 0?
Yes, or close to it. Yep.
Kevin, in this questionnaire, did the people responding understand what we were discussing when we said buses? Because to the gentleman back here's point, I also lived in New York City for quite a long time and use public transportation every day. And if it doesn't come right to my door or my block, such as my subdivision, it's a mile walk to Grand River. Very many of I'm the president of my association, 175 homes, roughly 250 residents. Most of them are over the age of 75. So there's no way that Grand River corridor, that they're humping their groceries from Myers checkout out to the street and then back to their condo, especially in the winter. And although I, completely agree with the gentleman behind me that transportation is freedom, my grandparents aged in place here up until I had to move them out. There's no physical way that we can offer a ride to every single person who needs to get to work. You do need a car, or else you can't be a productive member of this society easily. Or you will require the help of your neighbors at the cost of your neighbors. And as a private community, I ask frequently, how do we fund our private community, our roads? We're looking at a $5 million road project that I have to pay for. And I am not comfortable pushing costs onto other people just for my preferences. So I would like to know if there is going to be a committee for these decisions. And if so, I'd like to be on it. Because this is, as I mentioned constantly in my community, I've lived here for over 20 years, and I intend to live here for another who knows how many. And the other question I have is, what is the per ride cost? How much would it cost if state funding dried up, or federal funding, for us to continue handing these services to the people who do need that?
That is a great question, and I don't have that number in front of me, but I could tell you our average fare right now is about $2. What would that be? Absent federal and state funding, it would.
I was at a speech you gave back, a long time ago, at Cleary University, and at that time it was about $26 per ride that was unfunded if we lost federal grants or state grants. And I looked at that and said, and at the time we discussed, I think it might have been yourself, but somebody and I discussed, who's able to ride Let's. My grandfather was a World War II veteran. He could get rides once in a while if it was available, but we cannot turn down the average perfectly able-bodied person like myself who owns 5 vehicles. I can take a ride for $2 and maybe take the spot that you need because that's the law. You can't have higher priority over me.
And that is true.
And I find that to be just a little bit troubling that my neighbor may want to do a little booze cruise, set himself up a ride, go downtown, and my 90-year-old neighbor may not get to dialysis. That's a drag. So the last question I have regarding this is, do we have a plan to start partnering with the private companies, the Ubers, the Lyfts, things like that, so that maybe there's more of them out here? Because when I don't personally drink, but I don't always like to drive, maybe there's no Lyfts, there's no Ubers, and my wife is driving back from the airport as we speak. I would have just sent a car. So maybe we could entice them to come in a private partnership, a private-public partnership, and benefit everybody.
Yeah, and that is a good point. And to be clear, I have not had any communication directly with the rideshare companies. I think Lyft is the one that operates here sparsely. To answer the question, nothing has been done. Who? General Motors. Oh, no idea. But I would welcome that conversation. I would welcome them coming out here and just doing more business in general, taking care of those folks. And again, you are correct that we are open door service. We treat your request as the same as someone else's. That's why I would support a dedicated. If you were to do want to do something to improve the safety of the roads in the middle of the night, it would be a dedicated vehicle, so it does not take trips away from seniors, or alternatively, that dedicated senior vehicle that is just for them. So there are ways around it. Thankfully, at this time, it's mostly the folks who need it that call us. So we don't have a lot of that competition. What is competing, I wouldn't say competing for those rides, but a growing share of our ridership is just employment trips for the general public. Folks who can't afford, entry-level jobs, who can't afford a new or a used car at the prices they're at. So all good points.
Absolutely. Okay, excellent. Absolutely.
If we got a dedicated service for Genoa Township, would it make the waiting time or pickup or drop off time much more reduced?
It would. I don't have data in front of me to support that. I can confidently say that it would, although I tried to get at our on-time. We have a measure called on-time performance, which if any of you are familiar with our services, we have a half an hour window. So if you asked to be picked up at 2 o'clock, if your trip is booked for 2 o'clock, we could come anywhere between 1:45 and 2:15. So nearly 100% of trips in this township were within that window. So, I think the number came out to 0, which means we're right in the middle of that window. Can we reduce the wait times? Absolutely, I'm sure we could, because there are some, it's averages. So we have some that were 20 minutes late, 20 minutes early. Sometimes that's unavoidable. But yes, if you have a vehicle that doesn't leave or that only services your residents, it would reduce the wait time, because there would always, for the most part, be a vehicle here. Now, I can tell you, anecdotally, there usually is a bus in this township, but you never know where it's coming from or going to, and if that driver is in service or they're done for the day. So, but yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Right. Is some of the refusals, people saying they want to go to Ann Arbor, but we're not going to take them there.
It could be,
Is that
yeah.
what- that's some of the-
Yep, that's why I'm not I don't have any confidence in that number. I have a report available that tells me it's just there's so much, so many variables. Yeah, I mean, somebody could have requested to go to the moon, and yeah, we can't do it. So, but yeah, I think a lot of those are probably reasonable requests, but we do get and have had an increasing number of out-of-county, particularly Ann Arbor, Novi too, and we just can't serve them all. That's the one area where we really could use a lot more, but who pays for that? With the other township arrangements that we have, the contracts, they are only in county. They can, if the township wants, if Genoa wanted to be able to take residents to Howell, Brighton, or even Cohocton, sure, that's up to you. But I would highly recommend leaving it in county because you can suck up 2 hours going to Ann Arbor with one vehicle. So,
Excellent. Shifting gears real quick. Everybody, if you would turn to page 3 of the handout that I did. Some of these suggested improvements, and these are pulled from the survey that we did. And Garrett, if you could maybe allude, I actually see one on here that is already, I believe, in the works to be addressed. And then there are a couple others that, I think are at least on the road commission's radar. The number of feedbacks for each of these intersections listed next to them, just so people have an idea how many were concerned about that.
Yeah, so I'd say just going down the list here of all of these, there's a lot of these that are, we've done preliminary engineering, I guess you could say, on them, or studies to see, what improvements we want to make at some of these intersections. What it really boils down to make these projects happen is finding the funding and securing that funding. And then there can be a lot of issues that come with acquiring adjacent properties, for building a roundabout or widening for an intersection. Most of the time we can't stay within our county-owned right-of-way. So that's what can hold up a lot of these projects. As far as going down the list here, I'll just go with the first couple most popular ones, and then people can feel free to ask questions about other specific ones. Brighton and Chilson Road, kind of as I alluded to, we have started looking at what our options are there. We've modeled everything from a signal to multiple roundabouts to, there's a thousand different options we could look at there. The biggest issue we run into is the real estate or the property to be able to build it successfully. And then also funding too is never short. I mean, a straightforward, roundabout at like Chalice and Bauer, for example, that's about $1.5 million to build a roundabout like that. So it's a significant investment when you're considering. What's that at Chalice and Bauer? Oh, to get approval? Oh, the Chalice and Bauer one was talked about for probably 20 years, I would say, long before I was at the road commission. So yeah, there's multiple factors that go into it. Crooked Lake and Door, right out here. That's another one that we've been talking about in our office. Again, it's a conversation that will be had between Genoa Township and the Road Commission, because that's where most of the funding will come from, if not all of it, to help make it happen. So that kind of goes with all of these.
Is there any possibility you could repeat this? Now that the township owns that land over there, is there any thought that we could get around it? The problem is with the construction you have right now from 2 o'clock till 7 o'clock, you basically can't turn left. Now people are cutting through Old Carriage to get a left so you can actually get onto Door now. It's gotten that bad. And once the school traffic starts, it's going to get worse. So the only way the railroad track's not going to go down, so it's either the road goes up or you move the road. And the township now owns that land coming up over to here. That might be a thought.
Yeah, and I don't know the specifics of that land itself, but obviously we can look at all of those options. Like I said, we've modeled a roundabout there, we've modeled a signal there. It meets warrants for both of those. It's just a decision that we'll have that discussion with Genoa Township, and then as far as where those discussions become public, obviously I'm sure there's some of that along the way. So it's in its preliminary engineering phase right now, and again, like I mentioned, finding the funding for that can also be a challenge too. But those are obviously, I think, pretty close to in order of the the suggested improvements by, it looks like, feedback. A lot of these that are at the top are ones that we've discussed, and like I mentioned, we have models for them already built.
There's been a lot of rumor that, talk about funding a lot. There's been a lot of rumor that the road commission is sitting on a very large pile of debt. Why are they not using that money as funding?
Yeah, so I mean, the road commission does sit on a certain amount of money, and the reason for that is because we're planning our road projects out, 3, 4, 5 years in advance. The design costs that come with those, and then making sure that we have that funding available when the job does come to fruition. I guess it's everyone's opinion on whether or not it's a large pile of cash you're sitting on. I mean, our public budget, we post our expenditures and our revenues, and they typically match each other. So that money is there to make sure that we don't ever get to a project and don't have the funding to be able to build it.
Anybody have a question or comment on the projects that are listed there?
Not just specifically these intersections, but in general, where, and you mentioned something about where roads come out into certain intersections causing like 25-mile-an-hour zones, if there's enough things. But one of the things I've noticed is we have very few exit lanes into businesses. Almost every, like as you go down Grand River, if you want to make a right into the daycare or you want to make a right into the stone shop, you have to come to almost a complete stop to make a turn. And that's almost everywhere. Whereas in other states, other areas, there will typically be some sort of like exit lane, so that like even my subdivision, I have to come, it's a abrupt right. And so you back traffic up all the time. And this intersection here at Crooked Lake is very much the same. Anyone going that direction has to almost come to a full stop to make that turn. And it seems like if we started much less extensive projects of making the egress from the main road, get people out of the way, get them moving, so that we don't have as many aggravated drivers and people making very aggressive moves.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. One thing that comes along with that, just as a hypothetical here, if we were to rebuild Livingston County from the start, that you're right, there's a lot of those locations where we would want to put in all those decel lanes and acceleration lanes and whatnot. What we're working with is a lot of stuff that's been there for quite a long time, and it's sometimes hard to try and retrofit in a deceleration lane or an acceleration lane. What we do, proactively as a new development comes in or a road gets improved, is we look to install those as part of those, or if a developer's putting it in, that they put in those acceleration and deceleration lanes. And that kind of ties back to that whole conversation of the traffic studies that we take a look at when developments come in. We, as the road commission, take a look to see if there are center left turn lane warrants, for a vehicle that's going to turn left into the development or the neighborhood or whatever it is, and then those deceleration lanes too. And then as far as did you say you're on right off of Grand River? Right. There are certain aspects that encourage us more to try and put those in. For example, if you're on the 5-lane section of Grand River, it's a little bit easier for cars to get around if they can use that, if there's 2 lanes traveling eastbound or westbound. But you're right, on these single lane roads, there's not always it does require the vehicles behind to slow down in some cases, but we are trying to actively implement those wherever we can as we're continuing to advance our system.
Is there a study we can do for the impact that the current lack of those decel lanes has? Because it might be cheap, relatively speaking, to add them in. Like example, just using my subdivision because I know it very well, an extra 50 feet of asphalt along one side, because there is a center turn lane, would alleviate, there's probably 10 accidents a year, right there because of the lack of turn.
Yeah, I think the tricky part that comes along with that is they aren't typically as cheap as you might think to do it. Like you mentioned, when you're just thinking about it as a concept, 50 feet of asphalt doesn't seem like too much to put in. But if you're talking about Grand River, for example, there's curb and gutter there. There's sewers that are under that road. It's not always as cheap as just fixing at the surface. A lot of times there's a lot more that goes into it. Rebuilding the stone base and taking out the topsoil that's there. I don't want to get too into the details about it, but there's a lot that does make it a little bit more expensive than you might think at first glance, which can be the cause for maybe us not being able to install them in as many locations as they might seem fit.
Our law enforcement partners perusing the list. Do you see anywhere you might find yourself responding to more than you'd like?
So I just ran. So Michigan is terrible about getting statistics out in a timely manner when it comes to all law enforcement. So 2025 crash data has not been posted yet. So just a comparative analysis, and I'll leave this with Kevin. He can put it on the website if he wants to. So 2020 to 2024, injury and fatal crashes in Genoa. Back in 2020, it started at 57. 2024, it's risen every year with 88 in 2024. Non-injury crashes are 85% of the crashes. Possible injury, suspected injury, serious injury, and fatality accounts for all the rest of it. The majority of your crashes are 500 for over the 5 years. 597 of those crashes are on Grand River. 124 of them are injury crashes, and 16 of them are fatal. Your second leading road is Latson Road, which isn't a surprise. That leads with 364 crashes, 32 injuries, and 3 fatalities. And then it's one of those things that's hard to quantify, but obviously, Grand River and Latson rank above I-96, which is number 3. That has 55 injury crashes and 7 fatals or serious injury. Chilson Road, Brighton Road, and Hughes Road round out the top 6 roads. Your top injury locations are Grand River west of Latson Road. That's 57 crashes and 13 injuries. The Grand River Latson area, which is kind of like a all-encompassing on Grand River, that's 25 crashes with 8 injuries and 3 fatalities. Then Latson Road, and then Brighton Road. And your biggest crash problem is 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Let me see what this says too. Injury crashes peak in the weekday afternoon window of 3 to 6 p.m., accounting for over a third of injury crashes. The single worst hour is 3 p.m. with a secondary bump at noon and 1 p.m. The worst day is Thursday, followed by Saturday, and then the Friday through Wednesday range. Injury crashes are the lowest overnight from midnight till 5 a.m. I didn't break it down that much, but it's just normal traffic. It's 3. So, and Garrett can correct me if I'm wrong. Rush hour traffic is actually considered 3 p.m. till 7 p.m.
Around that range, yeah.
So that's your start of rush hour, and then morning rush hour is 6 a.m. till. And I know MDOT, when I try to do things out on the freeway, MDOT's morning rush hour is 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. So that's where they consider all of their highest traffic volumes.
Thank you very much, Chad. And real quick, actually, Amy or Kelly, if either of you want to tackle it, if you could discuss how, as we're looking at some things, we're trying to keep traffic off Grand River by making newer properties connect to existing properties, so there's not a new curb cut and a new way to get onto Grand River.
Correct. We always try to do, you want to be able to do service roads. Like you'll see Walmart has a service road, the Kohl's has service roads. We're trying to get Myers to connect to where Hobby Lobby is. It was already pre-planned for that. So we're trying to limit the curb cuts that are allowed onto Grand River. And we're trying to close off some when people come to, rehabilitate their building and their property. We'll ask them, hey, if you have 2, can you close one of these? But getting a curb cut from that section, which is covered by MDOT, is difficult, and we can't force them to do that. But we do try to ask if they can limit the curb cuts, that they have there right now. That is one of the big things that we try to do, is try to do the interconnectivity of the developments to stop the traffic. But But I actually had a question. Selfishly on my part, I live north off of 59. And as we know, 59 does not have the right, if somebody wants to turn right, they don't have the decel lanes to turn right in. Or they're single road. I don't take Latson Road home. I will take Hughes Road home. Or I take Hughes to Golf Club to Latson Do you think if we had another north road going that way, that would help with the Latson traffic? I know Hughes Road probably cannot be paved. I mean, it's wide, but I know you have all that wetlands and stuff over there. But I was just wondering, has any of that been looked at?
We haven't done any specific studies looking at an alternate north-south route. I mean, there is Eager Road, obviously, that runs, it's just to the west of it. I can't answer too much more on that. We haven't looked into it specifically. I don't think we've identified any potential projects north-south. I know there's been some discussions about, paving Golf Club Road, east and west. That'll get you to Hacker, which then gets you up to 59, but nothing else specific north-south in that area.
Just out of curiosity, does the road commission have anything to do with designing the roads, or are they simply installing and repairing the roads?
So we do oversee the design. So we typically will hire we keep a pretty small engineering staff in our office, but we do consult out with civil engineering design firms.
So those are the people that tell you what to do with the roads?
Well, we give them guidance on what we would like to see for the improvement, and then they make sure that it's meeting all of the state and federal guidelines for road design or roundabout design or signal design or what have you.
So in looking at the Genoa Township stops in 2025 for LETs, and in just hearing that the minor accidents happen between 3 and 6, I'm wondering if a dedicated bus for Genoa Township would relieve the sheriff's department from going to these minor related. Is that what you said? The ones between 3 and 6 are generally traffic minor related? If some sort of a study would show that would be determined, certainly a beneficial use to relieve the accidents, to relieve the sheriff's department, to give more opportunity for less accidents.
And keep our people safe.
Thank you. So I live in Grand River Latson Road area in Lakewood Knoll. And at the bottom I see widen Latson Road. Well, it's like a freeway now. And then with the discussion we're having now, I would take that off the table. But these discussions about paving some of these dirt roads to give another north-south option to me would make more sense. Because Latson Road, it's just crazy. All right, thank you.
Yeah, if
Thank
I can
you.
just
And one thing,
add on that point real quick, not to say it's a deterrent for paving gravel roads, but just to put it in perspective a little bit, if anyone's not aware, paving gravel roads is about the most expensive infrastructure project we do. The problem that you run into with it is a lot of the gravel roads we have, right, they're not that fully widened out. If you think about Latson, which is the extreme opposite, right, compared to a local gravel road, is there's a lot of widening that you have to do to be able to successfully build those. And then just the cost alone to be able to do that averages about $3 to $4 million a mile. So for the people that do question why certain gravel roads haven't been paved, it is simply a fact that it's one of the most expensive things that we do for projects specifically.
With regard to widening Latson Road, I don't even think they have room to do it. I mean, they widened it since I moved out there 30 years ago. And like I said, I don't know where they'd have room to even do that.
Yeah, it presents a large challenge. I haven't looked specifically at it, but just as an example, M59, which is owned by MDOT, I believe a lot of their right-of-way that they own there is about 400 feet in width, planning for those wider sections that they need. The road commission, on average, has about 66 feet in total right-of-way width. Roads like Latson Road, a lot of times will end up attaining a little bit more, but you're right, there are challenges that come with finding the right-of-way or the adjacent land to be able to successfully make those improvements.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the widening of Latson Road, I think, is more necessary north of Golf Club, which is Osceola Township.
I was going to say, what a lot of these projects in that area are going to be multi-jurisdictional. You know, their golf club is a weird one. It's part Genoa, then it goes into Osceola, then it bounces back to Genoa. So there are a few areas over there where certain plans would get a little sticky, but we have a good relationship with our neighbors and we could probably work something out. I'll get right back to you.
Would you like to go first? You have a question? I have a question. It's going to seem a little odd, but have we ever considered disincentivizing people driving their kids to school? Because we currently fund all the buses that drive around mostly empty, and there are just lines and lines and lines at all these schools every day, multiple times a day, so that people can go to the same place that we're paying to take them. And so could we maybe say parking spaces go up, charge to pick up? I mean, it seems nuts. As I go to down some of these roads, in particular, what is it? Hunter, I think it is, or whatever. I can't remember the name of it. That I had to go to get to Costco. There's a school there. I can't get anywhere. And again, I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm paying for the bus that also can't get here because you want to drop Susie off at school. So maybe we could alleviate a lot of traffic by making it less awesome to take or let the kids drive. I had to ride the bus. No, but they can ride the bus.
Yeah.
I did.
To answer your question on do we encourage that? Yes, absolutely. As far as how far our voice reaches as the road commission, that's tough, right? We can tell people to put their kids on the bus. A lot of them will still elect to drive their kids. So centering around the conversation, I see that Bauer and Brighton Road is on here. That is a too many people driving their kids to school, not putting them on the bus issue. That intersection is about at it. We have optimized that intersection and looked at it 5 to 10 times a year to see where we can try and improve it. And it is as optimized as it can get. The problem is it's backlogging to the school because of the vehicles coming to and from the school.
My question was specifically about that intersection because that's the area I live in. You can't go through the stop signs when you have a green because traffic going the opposite way is now blocking it because they've chosen to ignore the traffic signal and they continue going towards the school and now you can't go east-west. Do we have law enforcement opportunity there? Is there something else we can do to add another entrance or exit to the school? They're cutting through all the subdivisions around there just to go eastbound.
Yeah, we've actively had that conversation with Brighton Schools. Obviously, as the road commission, we can't do anything. We can't build a road on their property or anything like that. But that's a encouraging conversation we've been having with them about site circulation itself at Maltby and Horning. But as far as the public road system, it's like I mentioned, it's tough for us to add any more capacity to it. I believe that something needs to be done on the school property to help alleviate some of that.
So we do have SROs at the schools that do try to help with traffic and move it along as quickly as possible. But we're not in Genoa Township full time. We pass through, you see us a lot. We don't have a dedicated contract. So when it comes to like the law enforcement solution, we put you on the list with all the other traffic complaints in the 13 townships around the county, and we try to address them when we can. But by and large, our staffing hasn't changed since 1990. So yeah, so just like Greg, we don't expand without contracts. So having the staffing from 1990 to what we have today with 60,000 more people in the county, there might only be 3 of us on the entire road for the entire county. Yeah. Welcome.
But it is an issue for every school. It's not Brighton School. It's not Brighton High School. It's Brighton School. It's an issue with every school. And so whether that goes through planning commission and things like it, but it's every school. It's Three Fires. It's Highlander Way. It's Howell High School. It's Brighton. It's Hornig. It's every school has this problem for 1 hour, twice a day. It's Northwest Elementary. You can't even get, I can remember a ambulance being stuck in front of First United Methodist, it couldn't get through. So I know you have safety officers at schools, but it's more than just simple traffic enforcement. I think it really is. It's a Genoa Township. It's a city of Brighton. It's a Brighton Township. It is a conversation with all those school boards going, you guys need to do something different because your traffic isn't working.
Agreed.
From the sheriff's office administration standpoint, this is a frequent conversation that we have. And just so you're aware, the schools now, which I never thought this would happen, but every school they build or redo a parking lot, they're taking that into consideration, the number of people that are going to arrive at their school to bring them on property. But again, they're real estate restricted. It's one of the biggest complaints we have, speeding and school traffic. You know, and they back up in the roads. They cause all kinds of secondary issues for us. It's nonstop. Safest place for a kid to ride to school is on a bus, not in the car with mom or dad, right? Everybody knows that. Michigan, birthplace of the automobile. It's my God-given right to drive my car wherever I want at any time I want with whoever I want. So we're up against that too. So, you know, we fully understand and try and mitigate that as best we can. So.
And I can say as a parent too, the lack of bus drivers for the schools right now is a huge issue, because I know for my kids, they've canceled the bus multiple times throughout the year and just said, hey, we don't have a driver, so you're on your own. And that also leads to that backup. So when they cancel routes last second, that adds to the traffic as well.
I just wanted to add to that as well, because I also have kids in school. I think another huge issue is the amount of time kids are asked to stay on a bus. I know I wanted to put my daughter on the bus last year, but she would have been on the bus for almost an hour before she would get to the school. And I live 10 minutes away from the school, so I chose to drive her. If the bus ride would have been more reasonable, I absolutely would have put her on a bus.
As an old guy, I have to admit that hour that I spent on the bus was some of the best learning I did. I learned all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, so my son goes to Horning, so he's very familiar with all that traffic, and he actually says that he's afraid to take the bus in the afternoon because he's afraid he won't actually have a seat. So I believe the buses are getting used. But we do also have that problem of it takes an hour, whereas it's a 10-minute bike ride. But there's like a half-mile gap where there's no safe place to bike. So we're not able to do that as an alternative. But also makes it so that bus is actually really convenient for making sure we can go. But the main problem I actually have with the Brighton Bauer intersection is westbound Brighton at that right turn lane. So many people drive off the road onto someone's yard to get around people going straight. And I'm a cyclist too, so it makes me just afraid to bike too, because now there's people, you can't trust people to actually stay in their lane. So there's a lot of issues there. I consider the backup there part of the deterrent for getting more people. So I don't actually want to see traffic improved. I actually want to see it get worse so that people are forced to use the bus.
Just one other note I'd like to make about schools is that state law exempts public school districts from having to meet or comply with local zoning. So if a school wants to go in Genoa Township, for example, if it's a public school, we get absolutely no review and no approval for that. So there's no traffic analysis that we're able to do. All of the safeguards that we would typically put in place for a development that would generate that much traffic, we don't get a chance to have any input when it's a public school project. So, and that's by state law.
Real quick, I'm going to jump down. I'm going to have Garrett explain. A lot of people gave us suggestions of railroad crossings that need to be fixed. If you could just cover how that happens.
Yeah, so I unfortunately don't have the greatest answer for all of you. I do have the answer. The problem with the railroads that we run into is, I'm sure what you see quite often is a nice new road that's been paved, and then there's 25 feet of existing asphalt and a rough surface going over the railroad grade. The reason that happens is the railroad actually has superseding right-of-way rights to the road commission. It's one of the few situations where that happens and not the other way around. Normally we're used to being the ones that can kind of push through if we need to, but the railroad has those rights. So we are not allowed to touch asphalt within that right of way unless we get a permit from them. And there's a couple different railroads that run through Livingston County. CSX is one of them. Great Lakes Central is another. We have a relationship working with them. Some are good, some are not always as great. The problem that we run into is the stringent requirements that they put on us attempting to. So, a lot of our road projects that come up, we start planning for them sometimes as late as 6 to 8 months ahead of the project, which is a really short time frame. And a lot of times in that window, particularly with like CSX as an example, we cannot get a permit from them in that time frame to be able to work on the road in front of it. So therefore, we have to leave the asphalt from that point. The other problem that we run into is if we do happen to get that permit, we'll fix the road and it'll be a nice crossing, maybe minus the actual wood and steel that you're crossing over. And then the railroad will come through and they will raise or lower it. Most of the time they'll raise it and it becomes a really rough crossing again. So it's kind of a challenge that we've had working with the railroads as to why some of those are in such poor shape.
And what is that distance on the easement again?
It varies depending on which railroad you're working with. It can vary, like I mentioned, from as little as 20 to 30 feet. Sometimes it's as wide as like 60 feet or 80 feet though. So like I mentioned, we always try and make contact with them, attempt to make those fixes. The problem that we run into is even if we are successful in doing that, a lot of times their work that comes through ends up making it a problem again within, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. So we are making our best effort to try and get those redone. As you can see, probably there's a couple on Chilson that you may have seen where we were able to go right up to the rail, and that's great. And our hope is that those stay good for a while. Like I mentioned, until potentially they come through to do their work. But it's our goal to try and improve those to the best of our ability.
Their answer seems to be currently to just put up a sign that says rough cross.
Yeah, I assume you're referring to on Latson Road, just south of back. Yeah.
Or bump, as you've seen, yes. Did I hear you say that the different railroad companies have different easements there?
Yeah, they can vary in width. I don't know that it depends on the area that you're in, but
So the same railroad has different easements for different users?
The different tracks are owned by different companies.
yeah, there's different tracks that are running. If you see a track running through Livingston County, there's two that run somewhat parallel to each other. They do intersect at a point, but there are different operating railroads in Livingston County. One being CSX, and then one being Great Lakes Central, which is operated and owned by MDOT, actually.
Okay. For some reason, I thought they were all used by same entities. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see a little bit of an opportunity. Maybe we'll just have to do a town hall at a different time for the walkability and crosswalks kind of thing, because we're getting kind of low on time here. Is there anything else that anyone has any questions for all of our experts we've brought in?
I'm really pleased to see that we've got law enforcement here. I think that that is that's something that I think we should have more of within the community, having a direct contact with the police authority, and just to discuss things, just to have open discussions of the problems and that kind of. And I think that it would help alleviate a lot of the disrespect and the lack of trust of what's going on in law enforcement. And I just think it's a good thing. I don't know if that's a budgetary thing or whatever, but I really think it's something that we really need to look at.
Absolutely.
No, we appreciate that. Just so everyone's aware, we have an excellent working relationship with Genoa Township. The sheriff's office door, phone, whatever is always open. And when residents do complain, as much as people think we ignore it or put it on the back burner, we always call you back, especially for the sheriff and myself and the lieutenants that lead the organization. We do everything we can to make things work in this county and keep the relationships that we have incredibly valuable. And again, we want to keep this place as nice as it can be for as long as it can be, and try and keep it safe too for everybody. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I will second that. We have a great relationship with our sheriff and the department, the deputies, the lieutenants, everybody.
I have a question for the sheriff's department. The county commissioners, are they aware of the fact that you're working with the 1980 schedule regarding staffing and how understaffed you are? Are they aware of that? Have any recommendations come from the sheriff's department how to improve that and provide the quality service that this community needs, being one of the wealthiest community? I hate to keep going back to wealth, but being one of the wealthiest, it's embarrassing to hear what I heard tonight, how understaffed you are and how widely you're spread in providing the services.
Contracted with the schools, to have SROs in the schools. We contract with Osceola Township. They pay for us to be in their township 3 days a week. We're looking at going to a 40-hour a week next year probably. We're in Iosco Township, we're in Cohocton Township, we're in Heartland Township and Putnam Township with dedicated patrols for them. Tyrone Township as well. So those contracts are an expansion of patrol services because they're dedicated to that township. So the general pool of deputies that you see that patrol the other 13 townships and areas and off contract hours, that's what's remained unchanged. And like I said, and like Greg said, is that we don't grow without contracts. So we obviously are the biggest suck on the county budget at like $35 million because policing is an expensive industry, right? And the jail is a big industry as well for money. But we just don't have the money to put more deputies on the road to respond to those calls. They fund us for what we have. I can't say that they've never denied something that we've really needed in terms of equipment or whatnot, and we're all well paid and good benefits and whatnot. But if you went by staffing studies that the FBI put out, you're supposed to have like 2.6 police officers per every 1,000 residents, and a lot of townships and counties subscribe to that, and that's what they base their force numbers off of. That's just not where we're at in this county.
So what the contracts with different townships provide additional services. Because without those contracts, it becomes an impossibility to fulfill those obligations.
So we always respond. We'll always be available. If we've got a break from somewhere, we come, but it might just be coming from the other side of the county. So it might just be a long response time, but we'll always get there at some point.
If you can help us out quickly, contracts you have with Hamburg Township and Putnam and Nebula provide extra buses. What kind of feedback are you getting from the people that are living in those communities that have those additional services?
Well, for one, I think, what speaks. Thank you, sir. I think the biggest demonstration of the value to the citizens is that the township boards continue to renew those contracts, despite budget crunches. Putnam just did the same. I personally don't hear, Ben, directly from residents that often. I operate through their elected officials, but just that fact that they continue to renew, and I see the numbers, obviously. I see that we're providing many more rides, there's a lot of growth, where I'm certain that there would not be that kind of growth, in the absence of those contracts.
So it's kind of like an a la carte menu, I guess I'll say. If you want a part-time contract, it's $75 an hour. That's a non-40-hour a week contract. If you wanted to go full-time 24/7, there's one deputy in your township at all times. You're at about $575,000. If you wanted to build it out even more, the sky's endless. I mean, you look at like Hamburg, Green Oak, very similar to Genoa Township in terms of population size. They each have about 20 to 25 officers in their townships. Granted, they're millage funded, which is a little bit different, but it's just what you want, basically, what the township wants, what the citizens want, and then we cost structure from there. And because we're the sheriff's office, we charge 75% of the true cost because you're already paying county taxes. So we don't pay, you don't pay 100% of what it costs for the actual deputy, which is why we can do it a lot cheaper than installing your own police department.
So from 0 to 1, roughly
24/7.
One of the hard parts too in the previous meeting that I sat through with the township is that one deputy, unfortunately for Genoa Township, would probably make that person quit because it's that busy. My suggestion to the township before they put out their survey was it needs to probably be 2 because of what you're going to expect from your police department. And overseeing our road patrol division, you expect us in your subdivisions, waving to your kids while they're playing, just cruising through, just making the place safe. But then you look at the numbers and you see how many crashes are happening on Grand River and how many retail frauds are happening at your box stores that are at Grand River and Latson and all of that stuff that's involved as well. Is that if one deputy was here, they would be taking calls all day long. And the only time you would get patrols in your subdivision would be once everybody goes to bed at 10 o'clock at night, which you're not seeing them, patrolling in the middle of the night. Which already happens. And unfortunately, the numbers are the numbers. Genoa Township is the busiest township for the.
You gave us, and we put it in the master plan survey to see if there was support for contracting with the sheriff.
Yep.
Sadly, none of the options cracked 50%, so currently the residents, not over half the residents, feel that a contract is justified. We work with Sheriff Murphy and under Sheriff Buzz to evaluate that at all times. And if there's ever a point where they say, hey, you guys have to do this, by all means, but we're going to do it.
Well, and that's the hard part is Genoa Township is our busiest township, no matter what, tenfold. When it comes down to the actual raw numbers of how many calls for service and everything else, Genoa Township is the largest for the sheriff's office. But at the same time, in response to our community supports us. We've had so many lateral transfers from outside of Livingston County come and work at the sheriff's office, and they are floored by the fact that you're filling up gas and somebody walks out on a 90-degree day and hands you a bottle of water. We have, people that have joined our department that never got anything more than a one-finger wave, and then they pull through a subdivision just cruising around and everybody's waving, everybody wants to come up and talk to them, and they're like, this is like insane. So we have the support of our community. We love that. That's why we bend over backwards for the community to return it. And the majority of the sheriff's office, it's hard when it comes to a sheriff's office, but we cover 600 square miles and the majority of the sheriff's office lives in this county. So we all have a vested interest in being in this, and taking care of the people. Yeah, obviously everybody has their missteps here and there, or people call and complain because they didn't get the service that they wanted. But 21 years here, and we've never had to get rid of anybody because they were an absolutely terrible cop and they treated the public poorly. And people see the star and they love us. It's incredible when all that stuff went on back in 2021 with excessive force and everything. We had more people come up to us and shake our hands and tell us thanks. We're sorry it's bad right now, but we appreciate you guys.
My predecessor used to often make comments about it's true that Genoa Township has the largest amount of services, but also because our SCV is so high that we also contribute considerable funding, right? If you look at the amount of funding that we pay in taxes, that's commensurate with the level of response that's required for our community. And I just wonder if you had any thoughts about that or what your response to that would be.
So it depends on what the township wants and what the citizens want, really. So yes, you pay county taxes, but like I said earlier, we haven't increased our staffing levels for that general pool of deputies since about 1990. So if that's what the township's happy with, we're still going to continue to respond the way we do. But when you look at like the comparison analysis from township to township and what some have and some don't, it's a little bit lopsided at times. But again, it's just completely what you guys decide you want here in this township.
Thank you.
Not at this time. Genoa Township is the largest township in Livingston County that does not have a dedicated police. That would also make sense. We have the majority of the calls from a higher percentage.
One thing that's happened lately, unfairly to you guys, is we've had some concerns about some noise and some things like that that are ordinance violations. And your guys have correctly responded that, you know, you're not responsible for enforcing our ordinance. We have an ordinance officer. But if there's anything you'd like to say on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess just for the public, you know, when you call for like a noise complaint, that's a township ordinance that restricts that, not a state law. So we can show up and say, hey, please turn that music down, or hey, you're too loud, or whatever the situation is, but we can take zero enforcement action because we are not contracted with the township, so we cannot write any township violations. So that would fall on the township to use their ordinance officer to respond to those situations.
No, that's why
Right.
I wanted to hear from them.
So like in Osceola, for instance, they adopted the motor vehicle code so that we could write tickets under their township ordinance, and then they receive some of the funding from the ticket fees when they get paid. And we can write those violations in Tyrone Township if they ask us to. But just can't do it in Genoa Township or any other township that doesn't contract. Within the letter of the ordinance, so it has like a certain decibel. The decibel meter saying, yeah, over 90 decibels or something.
So one of the other things too is you have to contract for us. We have to be on paper as your law enforcement entity to be able to enforce ordinances. So by contracting with us, we become your police department. So then we can enforce anything, and I'll just use a perfect example from WHMI yesterday with your peddler and solicitor ordinance. We can do nothing about that unless we're your police department. If we pull up and say, hey, did you check in with the township and file all the paperwork for the township? They're like, nope. And we say, okay, you should go do that. Bye. That's what it is now. Because we're only governed by state law until we're contracted, and then we can enforce any ordinance that you guys put on the books, whether it's a noise ordinance, a loose dog ordinance, the peddler license. And that's kind of the thing too that you miss, like the undersheriff said. We have a great relationship with every township. Every township, you know, they call, we answer their question, all that stuff. It's the finite details that you miss when you don't have us as a police department. Is that Heartland Township, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., we have a deputy over there. The township manager, township supervisor calls that deputy direct and says, hey, I have this issue going on in the township with some ordinances. Can you come over and assist our ordinance officer? Because this day and age, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. The ordinance officers aren't armed. They're just you and us walking up to somebody's property and saying, hey, your grass is too long. And who knows what's going to happen. You know, we even stand by for DTE when they do shutoffs and Consumers Energy because they can't go onto property because they're scared because of past history with that property. So we do standbys with them, but we're only there to make sure nobody gets hurt. So unless we become your police department, you're relying your ordinance enforcement on whoever you elect to do your ordinance enforcement, because we're governed by state law until we're contracted.
Yeah, I think some people have misunderstood that, you know, like, we're not coming because you're not paying us. It's not that you don't want to come, it's that you're not allowed to come.
Well, we come,
Yeah.
but we just can't take enforcement action. Is the hard part, and that's where the hard part for public safety is in general. Is the general public. I don't claim that I know what doctors do. I don't claim what I know. I know what you do for a living and everything else. There's finite details that we can't explain everything that we do and what we can and can't do. So we try to do the best for when somebody calls 911 to complete that call to make sure every party is happy. But there are things that we're totally constrained on that we can't, even if it's the worst ordinance violation in the world. We can't do anything about it.
Okay, and that's good for our people to know. We'll keep investigating moving forward. Trust me, we will never start our own police department. If we're interested in policing, it will be a contract with the sheriff's department. It's the most cost-effective method.
Do you have any townships that just contract you from, let's say, 5 o'clock in the evening to like 9 o'clock in the morning?
So they're all different.
Okay.
Heartland is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Osceola has a varying schedule where it could be 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. one day and then 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. the next day. And they pay strictly on the overtime rate, so that's $75 an hour. So we allow guys to sign up for those shifts and they go in and work that car. The ones that are full time, like Putnam, set the hours. They're like 2 to 10. Tyrone's, they're 11 hours now, 2 to 11 p.m. So it's like what I said earlier, what the township wants, what the citizens want, and then we can provide the data showing when your calls for service are and the busy hours and everything like that.
Okay, all right. I had a resident ask me that question, so.
I know one thing that was very surprising when I worked with Chad regarding his recommendations for what I should put on there for what we should investigate for the sheriff is he was more concerned about a couple of units during the daytime than overnight. In our head, we're thinking, geez, overnight's when all the crime's happening, and apparently not.
Well, the biggest thing that people think about is break-ins. That's just always the thing that's on the top of people's minds. From the law enforcement perspective, you're more apt to get broken into during the day because people that break into houses are not looking for a confrontation. So they are, the biggest thing, Livingston County, my father-in-law was one of the problems too. Everybody leaves their cars unlocked. People that break the law are not looking to get caught and they're not looking for confrontation. So going through your cars and hitting an entire subdivision looking for unlocked cars for loose change and somebody that leaves a wallet in there, and then there's inevitably somebody that leaves a gun in a car that comes up missing, and all that stuff. So that's really the overnight type of stuff. And I hate to continue to beat the drum about COVID, but ever since COVID, you can probably roll up the majority of the roads in this county after 10:30 at night and put them away. And there's just not that much traffic. We lost 24/7 Myers, 24/7 Walmart, 24/7 McDonald's. We lost almost everything that was 24/7. So now the only things that are open 24/7 are right off the highway, and those are mostly gas stations. And then Brighton obviously has their nightlife that stays open till a little bit later, but those people go right back home. And we're, to your follow-up with the wealthiest community or wealthiest county, like most of the people during the week here have jobs during the week. So they go home and they go to bed, and then we're the ones that are awake all night making sure that all of the areas are covered, and we're doing subdivision checks and business checks. So if you were to contract, it wouldn't be beneficial to contract overnight because you're not going to see the reward, I guess, for what you're putting in. Yes, everything's going to be protected, but at the same time, Genoa Township's still 36 square miles. And when there's still a very big, high percentage of police work that's just sheer luck. When you catch somebody in the middle of a break-in or you catch somebody in the middle of doing something really wrong, we're obviously a proactive department in regards to making traffic stops, drunk driving enforcement, things like that. But there's also still a probability of luck that you have to be in the right place at the right time to do that. So.
Thanks to City of Brighton and City of Howell playing Pac-Man. We're about 32.6 square miles. Unfortunately, we were 36, but apparently they thought they wanted a little chunk of us. So, does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask? All right.
Reading the other day about some of the bills that were passed, and there was something regarding golf carts. Are you aware of any bills that were recently passed at the state level regarding golf carts on roads and the ability to drive them?
State law is in place, but then township has to say,
we have a population of 108,000, so we'll allow it on these roads, but it can't be
And can it or can it not be applicable to private roads? Yes. Correct. With that act? And is there something to do with an age appropriate? Have to drive a
But we don't come on private property to enforce things like that. That is going to be one of those things where we go knock on the door and tell your kid not to ride the golf cart. It really comes down to numbers. We just can't be everywhere.
So does the township have to enact something basically that says you can or you cannot? Okay. Yeah, but the state just passed legislation last week, so I was curious about it. Because there's a lot of people. Oh, okay.
Whatever on the side of the road. You can't ride it on the road, you can ride it on the shoulder. And the undersheriff's more of a hunter, he knows, and a snowmobiler, so he knows more about those roads than I do.
You can go faster on a snowmobile on the side of the road than you can before.
And just because you're on private property, does not mean you can operate.
Can you say that one more time for the people that are not listening to hear? Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I would like to thank the Genoa Township officials for putting this together. Thank you, participants, for coming here this evening. You've been a wealth of information. And I have nothing against wealth. I think wealth is wonderful. Owning 5 cars is wonderful. Nothing wrong with that. I feel sorry for the police, though, much more work for them, because one bus could take 4 cars off their road, and I'm just joking. But all in all, we're very fortunate to live in Genoa Township, because just what happened this evening shows how much Genoa Township cares for its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. We really appreciate it, and we'll have another one on August 26th, which is also Wednesday, and we're going to cover housing. It's going to talk about ADRs, or ADUs, excuse me, potentially STRs, a couple other things, some densities.